And then Kokoro catches her and she's like, that girl was lying. She was not telling the truth. She did it because she cares. Hello and gather round. We have another Kokoro episode, and I'm happy to report this is another banger. I love this episode so much, more than I thought I was going to like it, but it just really did so many good things that I super enjoyed it. Now, I'm almost positive this is the last Kokoro focus episode, and I will say, I do think it was a bad final episode for a character's arc, but a really good episode nonetheless. And you might be thinking, what does that mean? Well, we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna get into it, so give me some space to bring in the nuance, to explain how I feel about said. We start off with hanging out at our Idol Precure Research Club, where Uta comes in and she's like, guys, bad news. The club's getting cancelled. And we come across the antagonist for this, Chio, which also, by the way, her name is another little wordplay because, as this episode will get into, this girl is trying to be student council president, which in Japanese is Seito Kaicho, but her name is Chio, so it's like Seito Kaicho, Chio, like the joke's there. It's another, we got wordplay. Don't worry, we brought it back. We're gonna have wordplay as much as we possibly can. Anyways, this girl is running to be the next student council president, and as part of her addendums, she will be removing the Idol research. I also just wanted to take a minute because I was like, I don't normally notice heights in the show. I was like, these two girls are so small. Kokoro and Chio are like microscopic. They're so small, and I kind of like that because I feel like usually whenever they have these intimidating like student characters who cause problems in other seasons, they're usually on the taller side, and this is the first time I've been like, oh, she's small. I've just gotten so used to them subconsciously being tall that it's just interesting to have them be like, and now we have a small problem. Nonetheless, we meet this very analytical girl who is shaking things up when she becomes president. I love the fact that, like, she's not even president yet, and she's just, like, causing problems by being like, I'm actually just gonna redo everything at the school. I'm gonna make all these changes. Which, other side note. Now, I'm gonna say that I don't understand how student council presidents work in Japan right off rip, because the student council presidents in my school were basically figureheads. I couldn't name a singular thing that they ever actually did once they got into office. I also think we had a president for like every year, and I can't remember if in Japan like you just have like one for all the years, or if you nominate them per class. I don't know, it's a little convoluted. I assume that this person is the same age as Kokoro, and in the next, like, following semester, they'll go up. Because I believe take it back. I guess technically speaking, quote-unquote, Meridon and Purudun would go now into, I assume, high school, and then Uta and Nana would move up, and then Kokoro would be, like, the mid-year. Japanese schools are confusing. Nonetheless, this girl announces that she's getting rid of the research club. And I love that Kokoro immediately just starts defending the club, and I'm like, has she even said why she's not going to, why she's not going to keep it? I don't think she's told us that yet. Kokoro's just going immediately in defense mode, and it's, surprisingly enough, it's not very effective, because you don't even know why she's canceling it. I'm not going to lie, I think several steps of this whole process could have been avoided. Like, I don't think things would have gotten as dramatic if Kokoro was just smarter. I'm not going to lie. Like, first of all, she's sitting here defending the club with not even knowing why it's getting canceled. And then you'll see what happens next, but I was like, Kokoro, sweetheart, there are ways we could spin this in our favor. Nonetheless, it's announced that the reason why the club is getting shut down is because it does not have results. And coming from Miss Analytical, it makes sense that she's like, we are looking for results. We're looking for, like, concrete evidence that this is worth it. And so Kokoro goes now on the proper defensive by saying, this is what our club does. And I literally think this all could have been avoided because, to be honest, when they were like, we're gonna make a research club for one idol group, and that's gonna be our school club. I'll be honest, if I was the administration, I would have not approved it. I would have a club for one specific fan group for like school resources being used for. No, absolutely not. I was like, you can have an idol club for like all idol groups, but specifically you and Idol Precure, that's dumb. I would have not approved it. However, I will say that this club has done more than like most clubs usually do, because Kokoro starts listing off. She's like, we made this whole scrapbook. We sat here and planned layouts. We accrued photos, which mind you, I do think it's funny that she's like, we have really rare shots of the UN Idol team. And I was like, yeah, girl, you just took them of yourselves. But, like, she's like, we laid it out. We also made it look pretty. I'm like, yeah, girl, you literally made a whole book. In terms of tangible results, you guys did the equivalent of making a yearbook. Like, you now have this skill set of laying out stuff, picking photos, choosing proper arrangements, understanding fonts, organizing in a book, learning typography, learning, like, just how to use the grid. Like, there's a lot of graphic design skills that are going into this, and a lot of effort, and, like, also making it a full book that's, like, bound and everything, and it's curated. Like, it's like an actual thing. You have a tangible result in your hand that you're showing her. And it doesn't end there. Because then she brings the table of goods. She's like, we've made fans. We've made can badges. We make custom acrylics. I'm like, that's physical merchandise, baby. Like, again, these are all skill sets. Like, you have to learn how to do all of these things. Like, I'll give it that you can just buy something to make can badges and they're pretty easy. But still, you guys have manufactured products. Like, having to make a fan and acrylics from scratch, that's skill set. Like, that's what a club is supposed to be. And then, of course, they go to what the point of the episode is going to be, which is about how we've learned how to have organized cheering, which also is another thing. Like, again, if you spin it the right way, I do believe, it's not, like, super big in the West, but in Japan, I know that there were clubs at the schools that I had visited when I was younger, where they had, like, cheer squads, essentially. They had groups where the whole point was just being really coordinated physically with one another, and did some kind of cheer or dance or something. And again, the result is just like being coordinated with a group. You can spin this in your favor. I just think everybody's really bad at marketing themselves. And then Menadon very graciously, I love how much she participates in this episode. She very graciously comes in here and she's like, result this, result that. What's this whole result nonsense? You act like the value of people is measured by what they supply, which mind you, we supplied a lot. The results of our club have happened. You guys are just selling it really bad. But if we had sold it correctly, we wouldn't have an episode. And then of course she's like, well, clubs that have results are like sports teams where they can win. And I'm like, okay, but not every sports team wins. Not every sports team at every, like, there's so many schools that are competing against each other. You think everybody's gonna get gold? You think everybody's gonna win? Sometimes clubs just are there for other reasons. Like, it's not about, like, getting a trophy to bring back to the school. That's, like, a nice bonus. But from an administration standpoint, the point of having clubs and stuff at school is, A, it's mostly just to keep you guys out of trouble. It's mostly to keep kids from going down the dark path. But the other reason is, like, you learn skill sets. You sit there and you hone in some kind of skill set that might be beneficial in the future. Like, if you have a photography club, you guys are enhancing your photography skills. If you have a swim club, you're enhancing your ability to swim. There are just beneficial skills. It's about what the club gives to the individuals and what they get to carry for the future. It's not about what the club's bringing to the school. Like, the school wants to walk away being like, look how talented and skilled our student body is. Not necessarily how many, like, amazing trophies they have. Like, if it was really all trophy-based, then there would be, like, 2 clubs at the school, and you would just have your entire student body be funneled into one skill set. And be like, we're the tuba school. We're just really good at playing the tuba, and that's it. But of course, it's so we can have the episode. But I also still defend the fact that I think they could have absolutely played this up a different way and been like, do you not see the physical results on our table? Well, you're gonna tell me every single sports club brought a trophy home this year? I don't think so. Some of them only took resources and did not come back with anything. But my crew, we have crafting skills. And you know what? We could design the yearbook with the skill sets we've honed. And trust me, schools love to hear when the students will do the yearbook, because I can tell you the staff doesn't want to do it. Nonetheless, unfortunately, Kokoro's rebuttal did not go very well, so she's like, Plan B. If I can't stop her and I can't change her mind, then I'm just gonna beat her. We go with, like, again, week 2 of making a Love Live reference here. She's like, I'm going to now take on a role to save the thing I care about. And I'm saying it's a Love Live thing for a very, very important reason, but we will get to that. Our girl goes ham into doing the whole I'm gonna be the class president situation. And I will give her this. Kokoro would win. Like, right off rip, I was like, Kokoro will absolutely wipe the floor with this other girl. Because again, at the end of the day, when it comes to stuff, it's all about marketing. It's all about how you market yourself, not about your actual policies. The real secret to how you become student council president. You be a good public speaker. That's all you gotta do. I'm saying this straight up from witnessing it happening. You could have somebody like Chio, who's incredibly educated and very well read on the issues, who cares about it more. But she's also a stonewall. She's very dry when she speaks. And it doesn't matter how much heart and soul she has, she's a very boring individual to root for when it comes to picking the student council president. Versus somebody like Kokoro, who immediately stands out in the room. I mean, against like pretty much the entire cast. If I had to pick one of the 5 members of the group to be the most likely to win student council president if they all ran against each other, it would be Kokoro and maybe Puridun. Just because they have the highest charisma. And they have, like, the most extroverted amount of charisma. Because obviously you'd have somebody like Nana who would be very well-read and who would be very sweet. But she's too soft-spoken to draw enough attention to herself. Kokoro absolutely is going to wipe the floor with her because Miss Ma'am has a personality. Miss Ma'am, why do you think the Idol Club is there anyways? It's because she brought people together. She's got the charisma, and that's all that really matters. And technically speaking, the rest of the team knows it, because you immediately have Uta being like, so you've already won. So, like, now that you're president, what's the next step? I also like the small detail, like, obviously they do this every season, but I like the small detail of them having the framing have the, leaf fallen branch because we're moving into winter time now. I like the seasonal details that they have, and like, you know, putting them outside allows us to remember that it's like winter time outside of just like knowing they're wearing the warmer uniform. I like the tiny details. But back to Uta's question immediately brings up the fact that Kokoro obviously did not think remotely about what happens once she becomes president. She only did this so that she could make the club survive. A la the very Love Live method of, I'm going to do something to have a goal, but once the goal is fulfilled, I don't care anymore. They're like, I just did this so that we would save the thing. I didn't do this so that, like, you know, I could be, I don't know, a famous idol or anything. I'm sorry, I give so much shade to the OG Love Live. I'm so sorry for Love Live lovers. But Love Live OG makes me so mad. Thank God Love Live Sunshine exists though. Nonetheless, we have this moment where Chio is like, here's 50 things I want to do when I'm class president. And like, everybody else has the reaction of like, whoa, that's intense. 50 things, that's so many. And then there's me like, no one's gonna read that. Mucho texto, no one's reading that. Again, this is why she would not get class president, because this is too much. People do not care about you dryly explaining things. Does she have a lot of good attached to those 50 promises? Absolutely. They're all probably incredibly well researched, very much put the student body at the forefront. But she, like, if you just dryly read a list of 50 things, or just put it on a poster and say, read small human with small attention span, they don't care. They don't care. You gotta know your audience. And honestly, there's a little bit of me who's like, I kind of wish she would not be class president, because she does need to learn to, like, not just simply care about people, but be able to reach them. You gotta connect with the people. You gotta say the message in their language. But that's a whole other thing. My feelings towards marketing is a very different conversation to have. And then, of course, Kokoro is once again struck with the fact that she's like, I ain't got no plan. I don't know what I'm gonna do if I get to be president. But I do love that we have this moment with Metadon, and I love that Puridun's included, where both of them encourage her, where they're like, well, we know Kokoro, and we know how much she's dedicated to stuff, because that's the other thing about Kokoro's character. While she is kind of doing this whole, like, running for president very willy-nilly, she has been incredibly dedicated to the club, and, like, has, like, eat, sleep, breathed the concept of caring about you and Idol Precure, and has followed through on being like, not only are we just going to be a club where we care about these idols, but we're going to create all this merchandise. Like, she does have a full-fledged game plan with the thing that she's passionate about. So it makes sense that everybody else believes in Kokoro. However, Kokoro doesn't believe in Kokoro, because she's genuinely like, my heart isn't into it in the same way that Chio is. Chio genuinely cares about the student body through and through. Everything that she was talking about genuinely sounds like she cares about people. Now, she may have been an absolute jerk when it came to my club and was completely dense about understanding what it was, but to be fair, we also marketed it poorly. She does, in the end, understand that Chio is probably the better fit. And we have this moment where I think it does a good job of reintroducing Chio's character in a little bit more detail, because she comes in here and she's like, Kokoro, we have to go home. Like, she comes in here with the cold attitude once more, and I'm like, okay, girl, okay. But the thing is, behind the cold exterior, there is a burning sensation there is a warm heart, where she is not doing this to be a jerk, especially since Kokoro is her competition. You would think she's just being a jerk. But she's doing it because she genuinely cares about Kokoro. She thinks that she needs rest. And on top of having these actions that showcase that she cares, she gets her an umbrella. And at first is like, oh yeah, I have another umbrella. It is what it is. Get home. It's raining. It's nasty. Take care. And then Kokoro catches her and she's like, that girl was lying. She was not telling the truth. She did it because she cares. She did it because she cares a lot, which is, I feel bad. I feel bad for Chio because she absolutely is that archetype of a character, / there are obviously real life people who have a much harder time expressing that they care about other people fluidly with more emotion behind it, but she does have her heart in the right place. And this is where Kokoro is like, I can see that she constantly cares about other people, and she does actually care about the student body. Even if she's approaching it from a very analytical way and she presents herself very stoically, she does have a heart of gold, and she does deserve this more than I do. And I like that. I like that they managed to do that very convincingly, and they also managed to have, like, Chio look like a jerk at the top of this scene and then have it 180 and be like, oh wait, no, she cared. But they didn't have to put it into flat words. They didn't have to have Kokoro say, like, wow, I thought she was kind of a little mean or a little cold, but she actually has a heart of gold. Like, she doesn't have to say that. I think this scene does a phenomenal job of just displaying that. And this is why I like Precure. This is one of those moments where I'm like, this is where I like Precure. This is where I think Precure does a phenomenal job. And they've been doing it for years, because let me tell you, they have so much room to run out of ideas. But yet they managed to pull this off, and I think they do such a good job. We then have Kokoro get summoned by the other girls, who are like, hey, we kind of picked up on the fact that maybe you were feeling a little nervous, you were a little down in the dumps earlier today. We're gonna get you to read fan letters to, like, remind you that there's all these people who are cheering you on. And this is where Kokoro has this moment where she's like, oh, this is the power of encouragement. This is the power of cheering, which I, kind of argued was important earlier in the episode, but kind of sucked at explaining it. But it's in these moments where this is the result. Like, it may not be a tangible object that we can stick in a display case, but it's the level of support from other people that push you to believe in yourself, to give you the courage to not give up. And honestly, I think it's super valuable too, just to bring this up, because that's not like, oh, it's a power of friendship kind of moment in the show. It's genuinely something that's important for reality, and I do think it's another way they could spin the idea of the club, is that learning to encourage other people is incredibly important for just society, because not every single person's going to be like the winner. Not every single person's the leader. I do think society needs to get better at saying, hey, we need to support each other. We need to have a foundation of people, not just a bunch of head honchos. And I think this is just a good way to kind of have that message there. I also like that despite Kokoro in her own right having leadership, because she's the leader of the Unido Club, she's able to sit here and be like, I have this encouragement, and I have people sticking up for me and pushing me, but it also allows her to sit there and be like, I may not be the person who needs this support the most. I may not be the person who is the ideal person to lead. And I think that's just, again, really good lesson to give kids. In the meantime, we get our little villain moment where we again get a little nibble of Chokine's character, where we see that she does seem to have this growing sadness for missing Zakuri and Kari, to which Jogi is like, well, those guys were weak, and you better not be weak, or you're just gonna end up like them. Which, sends Chokine off. She's pushing her towards her final character arc, which is still not happening this episode. It will happen at some point. Not next episode, but some point. In the meantime, it's election day. It's time to get it going on. And it's one of these moments where we do see, Kokoro genuinely has so much support. After all of the campaigning that she's been doing with everybody, it's not too surprising that you have a myriad of the students supporting Kokoro. Because, again, she's the fun person. She's the loud, really extroverted, passionate individual who's going to draw the attention, especially of the most important people, which are the people who don't care. When you're sitting there and you're like, I really do not care who's president. I don't know who anybody is, and I just don't care about any of them. But you sit there and you hear somebody being loud and funky and fun, you're like, okay, I remember their name. Versus the person who's just stating facts dryly and you're like, forgettable. This is what happened. This is the power of charisma. And unfortunately, we do have this painful moment where the first time we've really seen a severe change in expression for Chio is sadness, which hurts. But it's such a real thing though, because it's these type of people who are more stoic and who are not as good about expressing their outward emotions. They're the people who are like, they get forgotten. They're the ones where people don't really think about the fact that they have emotions just because they don't outwardly express them. They do have feelings. And she's starting to feel the pressure despite having looked very strong the entire time. She's like, yeah, Kokoro is incredibly popular. She's incredibly charismatic. I don't know if I can actually compete with that. Like, I've been putting on a good campaign, and I did have a weird posse that supported me in the beginning, but, like, she's a little more charismatic. And then, of course, we get the speech in the episode where Kokoro is about to do the speech that we all knew she was going to do at this. And I do like that our fairies are under the table cheering her on. But Kokoro comes in and basically alludes to being like, support is very important. And that's why we need to support the best person for this role. And before she can, you know, drop the hot bar she was about to drop, we do have Chogine see that Miss Chio is super anxious and is a perfect target for the Monster of the Week. And because we blew the budget last week and the week before on the animation, oh boy, is the animation super PNG. There's a lot, like, I honestly, my talking PNG has more animation than what we see here. There's a lot of the girls moving around like popsicle stick figures. It's a rough battle. And it's kind of over before you know it. Obviously, we have a little bit of solo with Kyun Kyun, and then we wrap it up. I do like that, again, we get to see her song. I'm glad that we're getting their solo songs for these character episodes, which is also another reason why I'm like, this is feeling like it's the last Kokoro. And then we get to rush back to finish the speech where she's like, we gotta support people and I'm gonna support the right person, and basically is like, I'm stepping down from the race and I'm giving it to Chio because she's actually deserved the role. She's the person who cares about you guys and actually wants to make the school better. And like, that's the only way. That's the only way this kind of thing goes. I mean, again, saying this from my own personal experience, I remember that there were two people running for class president, and the one who was more educated on it and the one who like had more of a history and understood everything wasn't a good public speaker. She was just very, like, she was nice. She was very much like a Nana type of person, but unfortunately her competitor was incredibly charismatic. And despite, like, you know, her best efforts, her competitor ended up winning class president instead. So in this kind of situation, the only way she was gonna win is if Kokoro stepped down, and ended up winning as she deserved, because, again, it sucks. It sucks that the world's this way, to a degree. That the people who do care the most, if they're not a good enough public speaker, they're not going to be the one, though. Unless their competitor is as benevolent as Kokoro, and we have a situation like this. Otherwise, you know, that if you're charismatic enough, but you're dumb, you're still gonna win, and they're probably not gonna step down in reality. C'est la vie. In the meantime, now that Chio is elected, they have to figure out what they're going to do with the club. And Kokoro's like, don't worry, I solved it. We'll just make a second one. We'll just make a second one. Which is the other thing that didn't make sense to me, again, about how the Japanese Student Council president has power. Because they were literally like, so we made the Idol Research Club. And she's like, yeah. And they're like, it got approved by the staff. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, why is a student overruling the decision made by teachers? Like, you've lost me. You've genuinely lost me. Like, I could not imagine the student council president going rogue and being like, I canceled your club because I felt like it. And overruling the decision made by the adults at the school. That has me, like, absolutely, like, that doesn't make any sense. But I guess it's also funny because, you know, under the same logic, Kokoro's like, what's stopping me from just applying and this teacher's saying yes again? Who's gonna stop me? Like, we'll just keep making the club over and over again because clearly the staff will say yes. You're just the only person saying no. So, like, I genuinely, the power dynamic is so stupid that they could pull this off. This is actually a very viable solution to the problem. But it isn't necessary because Chio shows up and is like, hey, you taught me the true power of encouragement. And I've understood that results are not always like an object that we can put in display case, which I'm like, okay, yeah, I could have told you that from like day one, but whatever. I'm glad she's realized it, and I'm glad that the rest of the weird student council of cronies also joined in on being like, we are now bum 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 cheerleaders. We've all turned to cheering. And also, you know, the tiny thing where they're like, Chio requested this kooky little song to be played, and can you believe it? It was Kyun Kyun's song. Wink wink nudge nudge, full circle moment. And we have a cute little, like, we save the day with the power of being bands to wrap up the episode. And just to, like, explain myself a little bit more from where I talked about it at the top of the episode, I genuinely think this is such a good episode. I think this is such a like, again, Kokoro's episodes are always really good, but I think one of the reasons why Kokoro's episodes are so good is because it's just unique. I think this is a really, it's not like a super unheard of story to tell, but I think the way that they told it was so good, and I think they like checked all the boxes for like this being perfect, not only just like a good episode, but it's perfect for this show. They took advantage of the whole idol fan concept that they've been pushing in the show and made it work, but they made it work in a way that actually makes sense. It's not just like, yeah, anything can happen if you are a big fan of some kind of IP you can throw a lot of money at. It's like, they really talked about the message of encouragement and how being an idol fan has taught people how to encourage others, and the message going beyond just like the capitalism that's always been in this kind of show. And I like that a lot. I think they really took advantage of the theming of the show and integrated it into a decent, unique message, and told it in a way that we haven't seen before. And again, they've done that with all of Kokoro's episodes. The way they handled the Mother's Day incident, the way they handled her character introduction, all of it's just been so good with Kokoro. And I'm really happy to see that, especially like as much as I, spoke on the Nana episode before, it's been done. It's been done before, which is why I'm so happy to see such a unique thing for Kokoro. But I also, again, think Kokoro is a little bit of an easier character to work with, because they did give her a unique thing to work with, which was the club. And then she has a much more unique personality that gives her a little bit more room to do something zany like run for class president. But I do think that this was not a great conclusion to Kokoro's storyline. Like, I think this would have been a great episode in her character progressing over the course of the series. Though, to be fair, the last Progress episode was kind of joinked by Dancing Star Precure, so we take what we can get. But I feel like there's a couple of reasons why this wasn't super strong as a final Kokoro episode. One, low-hanging fruit to point out, the fight. The fight was bad. The fight was like, whatever. I think the Nana episode was much better about feeling like this was Nana's final stand and this is where she stood with the group. And I think it was more team-oriented than Kokoro's being very like, this was her own problem. Obviously the team was there for her dealing with this, but this was, again, a problem that was only in this episode. It wasn't something that had been foreshadowed through the course of the series. And it just, again, it was a fairly self-contained episode. And I think that's the other thing why I like Kokoro's, like, overall arc was just not strong in the series. She was one of the characters where every episode was kind of self-contained. Whatever problem was just there, and there was no overarching story except for at the very beginning of her character. And I'm somebody who prefers overarching stories. That being said, I don't think I will ever, like, look poorly back on Kokoro's character. I think I will remember every one of her episodes as very, like, separate entities from one another rather than the story of Kokoro. But I still think they managed to pull out what they could. And again, it makes sense too that Kokoro's fight wasn't as emotional and dramatic and well animated as Nana's was, because A, they blew the budget last episode, but also because we had an epic one. If we had another episode that was written very similarly, it would have been kind of exhausting to have basically like, and here's Wink saying why she must stay with the team, and then here's Kyun saying why she must stay with the team. It would just be too repetitive. So I get why they did what they did, and I understand why it's written the way it is. I just like overarching stories, and that's just my personal preference. But again, all in all, very good episode. Very happy with this. This is the kind of writing that I roll up to. And then we have next episode. Hopefully, God, I hope. I have to look at the titles. I have to remember what the titles were. It might be a two-parter situation, because obviously we're getting to the end game with Kaito and Kazuma, which, like, thank God we're doing it sooner than later, because I swear to God, if that was something super important happening in episodes 49 and 50, I would scream. Like, let's end this Kaito misery so I can move on, because we all know that if Kaito's in the episode, the rest of the characters don't matter. It's just Uta and Kaito. And I'm like, we still, technically speaking, haven't had a conclusion for Miss Kisenzakyun, so hopefully we get past the Kaito arc and then we do something Kisenzakyun related, especially since we're gonna eventually have to deal with Dark Ine, and Dark Ine had connections to Kiss. We'll see what happens next week. But anyways, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye bye!